Hey everybody, this is John from John's Long Box. This is a late video because I had just internet problems. So I finally found this. I was going through boxes. My comic book room is done, so I've been pulling comic book boxes out and looking inside of them and putting them away. And I finally found A Contract with God and Other Tenement Stories, a graphic novel by Will Eisner. Now the term graphic novel was not invented by Will Eisner, but he, with this particular book, he made it the term that is now for comic book books. Little background story on this. This came out in 1978 by Will Eisner. Will Eisner was one of the original comic book artists. He did an 8-page newspaper supplement with his character called The Spirit. And what that was, it was a free insert that was just stuck into certain newspapers. And it was like like the Sunday Funnies. It came with free with your Sunday newspaper, and he just wonderful. It was 8 pages filled with wonderful art and great characterization. Usually a full story in 8 pages. I yet to see a modern or any creator pack so much characterization and individuality of characters in only 8 pages. Some of them only showed up 1 or 2 times, and they were just fleshed out characters. So Will Eisner, as you may or may not know, was born. He's Jewish, and at the time there was some real discrimination, and he aspired to do more with his art, and he couldn't get hired. He couldn't get into prestigious schools because they were restricted against Jews, and he started working in this newsprint comics, and he wanted to elevate the art form into something higher. And in 1952 he dropped The Spirit, and he had like a art studio where he was making educational even before that, during the war, he was working with the War Department, with Stars and Stripes magazine, and he was making like morale boosting stories or comic guides on how to use equipment, stuff like that. So he was always had one eye towards elevating the medium. So he quit 1972. He quit 1952. I'm sorry, and then he came back. He was wooed by the independent comic scene, like the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, stuff like that, and he saw that this might be, and the fans were begging him to come back, and so he wrote this, drew this, and then his agent got it published by a book publisher rather than a comic book publisher, and they sold it as a graphic novel. He was inspired, apparently in the 1920s, there was French and German cartoon artists that made basically comic books but with no words, so they could transcend languages and stuff like that. Now, Will Eisner wasn't a particularly religious man, and I think it was 1972 he lost his 18-year-old daughter Alice to leukemia, and you'll see he became like angry at God. Why would you do this to an 18-year-old girl? What did she do? And that theme is in this book. You'll definitely see there's a I can't remember the name of the characters. I literally haven't opened up this book in over 20 years, but I do remember some of the pages and some of the panels and the themes. But I do know that one of the characters is semi-autobiographical, and who writes The Contract with God. Okay, so and Other Tenement Story. Even if you're not religious, this is just wonderful. So the first printing came out in 1978. This is obviously a reprint. That's one thing that I'm looking for, is one of the hardcover autographed editions of this first print. I haven't really looked. Forward by Denny O'Neil. Okay, you see a tenement in the Bronx. This is the setting near Dropsy Avenue. Eisner returned to this setting, Dropsy Avenue, with I think a signal from space, and then I think there's one called The Building, and then there's another called I don't know why I said a signal from space. That's not set in Dropsy Avenue, but there's one called Dropsy Avenue, and then one called the tenement. And New York Stories, I think, were all set in this fictional tenement. At the time when Eisner was a kid, there were a lot of ghettos, and ghettos being not the modern sense of the word, but the original sense of the word, just highly ethnic neighborhoods. So an Irish ghetto, a black ghetto, a Jewish ghetto, an Italian ghetto. So it's just like a area of mostly one ethnicity. So here's the introduction. I just love the sketchy. And this is Eisner doing himself. I forget the name of the inker that he worked with in the Spirit, Jules something. And, or maybe, yeah, I think I'm getting that wrong. Don't quote me on that. And here is just the setting up the wonderful premise, the wonderful story rather, the setting. Just seeing that everybody lived on top of each other. Now look at that. I just love that. Chapter 1. I could just drink in Will Eisner's art. He died in 2005. A contract with God. Okay. I'm not going to read it to you. I'm just going to peruse through. And if I remember correctly, this is the character that is loosely based on Eisner himself. Look at the rain. You know, you don't need to see the rest of the building because the rain is creating like a tunnel vision. Just it's almost like a play. Look at that. Look at that tunnel under the steps. Just masterful. Eisner never liked superheroes. The Spirit wore a mask, and then he hated it, and he tried to do away with the mask, but the publishers didn't want. I just look at the perspective. Look at the defeated. You almost can't tell the details. Clothes are soaking wet. I'll do you good after the funeral and all. So he's coming home after, I think, the death of a child. And here he is, Frim Hirsch, because Frim Hirsch had a contract with God. And a contract is a contract. After all, it was a Solomon agreement of many years. Just look at the loneliness, the sadness. It just evokes emotion. If it doesn't, I'm sorry, but you're heartless. And I got to go faster because I'm already at 7 minutes. So here's the backstory of this character. A very kind man. Always helping. Friend to the homeless. And he made a deal. I'll be good. I'll make a contract with God. And that night in the forest, he wrote a contract on a small stone. With a little stone tablet in his pocket, Frim Hirsch settled in New York, where he found shelter in the Hasidic community, where he took religious instruction and devoted himself to good works. Faithfully and piously, he adhered to the terms of his contract with God. And here, you know, this is the proxy for Alice, his daughter. Look. Oh, and then the book closes by itself. And she died. Miss Hirsch, your daughter is dead. No, you can't do this to me. I have a contract with God. It's heartbreaking. Knowing the backstory, which I didn't know at the time when I read this. I only read it I think I read it a few times when I first got it. You know, and I was angry with God. You violated our contract. You know, if God requires men to honor agreements, then also God must also be obligated. And of course, he's shouting into the thunderstorm. I mean. And you could feel the anger that Eisner himself probably had. And he spits on the contract. He cleans himself up. He's done with religion. Okay. 55 Dropsy Avenue. That's the imaginary building that was the setting of so many Eisners. So he's buying the building. I think he's going to become a businessman. Yep. So yeah, the kindness is over. He's evicting people. Raise the rent. Can't do that. And he's looking at the building, getting himself a trophy wife, who's also talking him into doing some other things. No, I need. You know. Again, I'm not going to read the story. I kind of forget what's going on over here. I'm just admiring. Sorry, I got all silent because I'm just admiring the art. But I'm going to skip ahead because I don't mean to just show every page. You got to read it yourself. Take your time. But there's I'm looking for one. I just look at the way the camera, if for lack of a better term, looks. You could see the fence, the shadow, the different angles. You know, a lesser artist would have just drawn this from a flat angle. You know, you start out out a flat angle, then you pan up, then you pan in down. Just a master. And here, he finds the contract with God. Look at that. Just looks like a stage play. You can see the shadows and the inking. It's chapter 2. Oh, I remember this. This guy just sings on the streets. He gets drunk and sings in the streets. Look at this wonderful page. Look at that. And if I remember correctly, oh yes. This woman, she calls him up. She loves his beautiful singing voice. She gets herself cleaned up. She feeds him, and this he's out of work. This is during the Depression, so he's out of work. He's got nothing to do, so he just sang in the streets, hoping people would throw him money. And now he's this wealthy widow, or I don't know wealthy, but she's got some money, and she's doting on him. You know, she's cleaning him up, buying him clothes. Yeah, I think he takes advantage of her. Now he's boozing. Shut up. Shut your kid's mouth. You know, he's a jerk. Slaps her around. She beats him with the bottle. Again, I don't want to read the story. I'm looking for one particular panel. So, the super. Oh, this story is heartbreaking, if I remember correctly. I'm not going to spoil this one for you. This story is heartbreaking. You know, the super lives down by the boiler room with all his girly mags and everything. I could go on and on about it. Yeah, this girl comes in. She's giggling at all his dirty pictures. I just realized I'm probably going to spoil the story. I'm going to skip a few pages because. Okay. I'm showing too much. Look at that cityscape. Look at that. Just amazing. Again, I'm not going to spoil this. So it's just go read it. You know, this is literature. This is the closest you're going to get to literature in comic books. Maybe. And I'll talk a little. Hard to do this with one hand. Going through the city. It's Grossman's. This wonderful artwork. This reminds me of Ellen Dolan, the love interest in The Spirit. You know, he has a distinct style of face. I think Will Eisner is the one who famously said all artists draw the women the way that they're attracted to. So I've never seen Mrs. Eisner. I wonder if she looks like that. I don't want to spoil because every story has a nice twist. Look at that cityscape. That I'm just giving you a little glance of Will Eisner. Here it is in color. The Street Singer. nice crease across here. I'd love to get a hardcover signed edition. I have a couple of autographed editions of Will Eisner books, but so I just want to say this about Will Eisner. I kind of skimmed through this fast on purpose because I want you to read this. I don't want to tell you this story. I don't want to ruin this for you. I hope that got you interested. I mean, the artwork is wonderful. It's not superheroes. It's not Spider-Man. Will Eisner, I think, didn't really care for superheroes and stuff. That's why the spirit is more of like a detective story, adventurer story than a superhero story. But if you ask me, if you were to take a Mount Rushmore of comic books, you'd have William Gaines. I'd probably put William Gaines Sr., the father of William Gaines. I'm going to say it wrong. His name's not William Gaines. But Bill Gaines created he took over EC and Mad Magazine, and he ran it for 40 years. He famously was taken before the Senate subcommittee. But his father, I think it was Albert. Oh, that's going to drive me nuts. But he pretty much invented comic books. So without the father and son team of Gaines, you don't have any comics. So that's one head on the Mount Rushmore, whether you want to put the father or the son. The second head would be Will Eisner. Will Eisner was, I think, the first to really see the artistic merit in comic books and try to elevate it. Not until recent years has anybody worked as hard as Eisner to make comic books a respected literary art form. And then, of course, we have the other two heads on Mount Rushmore would be Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, because without those two, where would comic books be? They got every kid in America, from the 50s to the 80s and 90s addicted to comic books. These days, I don't know if kids are even reading comic books. But those are the four heads on Mount Rushmore. And I'd just like to say that the comic book is truly, if a Jewish New York American invention. And it's like art through adversary. These Will Eisner, especially, and Gaines, they couldn't get work in other forms, so they pretty much invented their own. And then Stan Lee went to work for his uncle, and Jack Kirby, I think, just loved. He was just an artist and just loved the medium. But what would happen if I hate to say it was a good thing, but like a fortuitous thing from bad circumstances, that the American comic book, and thus the comic book, was created. Like, what other truly American art forms are there? There's jazz and comic books. Is baseball American, or is it like just British with cricket? I don't know enough about it. But there you go. That's my thoughts on Will Eisner and Contract with God. If you're serious about comic books, if you really want to get this is a must-have. This is just one of the watersheds in comic book history. Okay, there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. Sorry about the late video. I'm gonna, now that everything seems to be working again, I'm gonna go right away and make another, so tomorrow's video won't be late. Thank you very much. Bye bye.